Hi everyone. In this video, I am going over the changes I did for an overpay and a review of Patreon's art. This is the overpay and this is the original. At the end of the video, you are going to find a time lapse of the process. And in this section, I am just going to explain the changes. Okay, in the original, one of the first things I noticed is that the breasts were misplaced. And the misplacement of the breast seemed to originate from the fact that there was not a solid ribcage shape under them. Remember that the breasts are like details, and the main shape is actually the ribcage. So you need to place the ribcage in a very proper way for your pose before placing the breast. So in the overpaint, you can see that here, for example, the ribcage has a very egg-like shape. You have a very narrow top and a very wide bottom. And once you place that rib cage, just let me clarify this a bit more because I kind of messed it up there. You can come and draw the breast. This is the near one. The far one is going to be extremely close because we are dealing with almost a 1 point perspective. And yeah, you can see here, for example, the base of the neck, and the tilt. That's another characteristic feature of the ribcage. By tilt, I mean this. I think some of you have seen it. Basically, the ribcage has a counter tilt from the waist. Both are the main shapes of the body, and they feather those rhythms. One is opposite to the other. So when you draft your ribcage, try to keep that in mind. Okay, so when I go back to the original, you can see the difference it makes to place that ribcage beforehand the breast. Another thing I noticed in the original, let me erase this, is that the eye was too surface level. Like the eye socket was not buried enough into the skull. And no matter what kind of angle, point of view, pose, the eyes should feel as if they were buried into the skull. For example, in the original, I can just grab that eye socket and the eyeball, and just by moving those feathers into the skull, you're going to notice that it already makes a difference. It already looks more proper. Um, a hint or a tip I can give you about how much buried into the skull you should make the eyeball. And this is mostly dependent on style and other factors. However, almost always you are going to notice that the eyebrow is forward from the eyeball. So that's a good tip, a good general rule to keep in mind to properly put that eyeball into the skull. If you keep your eyebrow in front of your eyeball, you're doing things more or less correct. Okay. Um, Another thing I noticed in the original is that the clothing it was not badly placed. However, there is a missed chance to remark the anatomy, the characteristically hourglass shape of the female body. And you can see that in the overpaint, for example, you can see how fitted that rib cage, that midsection, and that waist look compared to the original. In the original, as I said, the shirt is not badly placed per se, but you miss that chance to make it more appealing. Okay, to do that, however, you need to change the action of the pose. And what I mean by that is that in the overpaint, I had to do this basically. I had to make the hand grab that shirt and pull it downward. I know it looks very messy right now, but that's the idea. To keep that action there, and you have a justification to pull that shear downward, and that makes the shape to be more appealing. Okay, so to do that, there is another consequence, and the consequence is that the arm and forearm had to be locked and had to be turned toward the inner side of the body. You can see that turn towards the medial side, the inner side of the body. And what that makes is that the deltoid is going to change shape. You're going to have a posterior head of the deltoid pulling from the back, and it's going to be the most visible head of the deltoid. The one in the middle is going to be less prominent, still visible, and the anterior one, the one that's in the front, is going to be less visible. It's almost disappearing. It's barely peeking. You can see that the deltoid has a characteristic. The inner shape has a pointy end, but the top side, the one that determines that silhouette, that contour, is very blunted. The problem is that in the original, the deltoid is not blunted; it's almost pointy. You can see that there. So that's why I decided to make the deltoid more blunted at the top. Even if you ignore the turning of the arm and the forearm towards the inner side of the body, the top side of the deltoid is going to be quite blunted. The only way you are going to see the pointy end of the inner side of the deltoid is if the figure is very muscular. Okay, so you are going to see those striations there of the different heads of the deltoid. But in this figure, is not going to be the case. Okay, let's move upwards towards the head. The head, the back of the skull, specifically the back of the skull, is not bad per se. I can see a simplification occurring here on the back. You can see two planes. However, those planes are not very differentiated. What I mean by that is that you need to establish a hierarchy that is product of the contrast of those planes at the back of the skull. What I do with my figures, and you might have noticed this already, is that I employ two planes. However, those two planes are very differentiated. For example, the bottom plane is going to be short and is going to be concave. The top shape is going to be convex and is going to be quite tall. So here you have a plane at the bottom that is short and is uh, con- uh, concave, and the top plane is going to be taller and is going to be convex. So that totally indicates to the viewer that there is a strong separation between those planes. If you go back to the original, you can see that that hierarchy is not established. So yeah, it's a quick shortcut. It's like a general rule, but it's a good one. I feel it fits almost any type of character. Um, Staying in the head, you can see that the original has a very narrow ear. And if you want to avoid that, you can use a hair shape and just grab the half of that hair shape, give it an angle of 45, between 30 or 45 degrees. And with that hair shape, you are going to avoid making the ear too narrow. Okay. Uh, Obviously, it's not totally a hair shape here because I like to angularize my landmarks. By that, I mean that uh, I like to make those angles very remarkable. But if you go and zoom out, you are still seeing that hair shape. That original hair shape is still there. There are other landmarks there. Obviously, there is the antihelix, that is like a Y letter. is missing from the original. That Y letter is obviously overlapped by the circumference of the ear. But in general terms, that hair shape is a good starting point. Okay, let's see what else. The pose, you can see that the tie is a very important shape. It's very prominent. And in the original, you are seeing that. However, I feel it lacks some of the characterization that I did in the overpaint because the knees are very pointy, are overtly boxy. So you can see that in the overpaint, it's almost an spherical shape that is that that you are only seeing a part of it. Not totally, but yeah, you can see that the far one, for example, the far one is more boxy, but this one is very curvy. It's not pointy at all, too. So staying with the tie, I decided to do a drop shadow here. And that drop shadow, what it's going to do is tell the viewer that the important shape is that which is in light. For example, if I go back to the original, you can see that the leg shape and the thigh shape are illuminated in the same way. So you are not telling the viewer, oh, the thigh is more important. You need to be more bold with that decision, with that intention. Okay. Staying in that song, you can see that in the original, both ties are very samey. By that I mean that the indication that one is nearer to us is not very obvious. Why I say that? Obviously, the location is telling us that, but if you notice the value that is used here, it is the same value that is used here. The contour is the same, and you are missing an opportunity to change the far one and give it a lower contrast so it mesh more with the background. In the overpaint, for example, you can see that the value is closer to the background here. So what that is telling the viewer is that this object is meshing with the background more, and that is mimicking the atmospheric perspective of far objects. Obviously, it's very exaggerated, but it is very effective at the same time. You can see that in the overpaint, it's very clear that the near type is quite near and the far type is less emphasized, is less important. Whereas in the original, that differentiation is not there simply. So yeah, those are the main points I wanted to make about the overpaint. Um, if you want to check my Patreon, in case you want this kind of review, I offer them, and I also include a layer of notes. You are not only going to have the original and the overpaint. I also make a note layer, and for this one, I also did that, but that's one that I kept for the patrons. And I also record the time lapse, and you can contact me over Discord in case you have any doubts and ask me directly why you did this, etc. The sharing of the review is optional. Some Patreons are okay with it, some others are not. I understand, and I don't always ask. Sometimes that determination is very dependent on how non-safe for work the piece is. If the points I made in the overpaint are very clearly conveyed, are very linked to fundamentals, for example. So yeah, and it's just something you might want to consider if you are, especially if you are self-taught. And yeah, I hope this was useful. And and if you have any kind of question, let me know. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.